Clark sisters, in my humble opinion, are the best female gospel group in the world. And the reason why they are the best is because they had a mother who was formidable and drove them. And she had a really strong character. I felt sorry for her husband, to be totally honest, because that drive that she had means that she couldn't even cater for her husband's needs. And then we saw the whole incident with the domestic violence. But as a woman, yep, I'm in her corner. I think she's fantastic. I think the Clark sisters, she's produced a group that every group in gospel wants to be like. The producers of that film, Mary J. Blige, Missy Elliott, all love the Clark sisters. No doubt about it. She's influenced them. Great group, great film, loved it. Props to Mattie Clark, even though I wouldn't like to be taught in a choir by her.
So, Pastor Lloyd, your own take on it, because, you know, the relationship, it was like my way or the highway, and she was even prepared to kick her husband to the curb. I found that a little bit sad.
It was a bit sad, but I think the film, as it's been said, it's got sacrifice, loyalty. The family script that's described and lived out is displayed in most families around the globe in one way, shape, or the other. But to have that brought into being in one family, so talented, it shows the stress and strains that they've gone through and still come through at the other end. And I like the idea that comes what may, they recognise the sisterhood, they recognise the familiar, and they even appreciated what their mum did. But I think that the whole idea of how they melded together, how they came back, and how they still work through is a good depiction of family, because we all go through things as family, don't we? So yeah. I think how they brought that together was wonderful.
Wasn't she getting her children to live the dreams that she didn't have?
Well, I think there was a degree of them living vicariously living through them, but I don't know if it stretches past that. And you can forgive her for that. I totally think she went, there was vision there. There's no doubt about it. There's definitely a vision there. There was definitely a harnessing of talent. There was definitely a surrendering of the gift that could become something greater, if not channeled. So we see all of that. And I think, yeah, maybe there is a step of her, you know what, I couldn't achieve this and you are, and we're going to make sure, and it's at all cost. I think we benefited from it. All of us have benefited from it. And that's the thing about sacrifice. Someone makes a sacrifice for someone else's benefits. And we're the beneficiaries, and that family have had the sacrifice. So it's one in the same, really. And one hand washes the other when it comes to family.
So do we still have those kind of, if you like, Bengalis around today, those managers and producers who are as pushy as that in gospel?
I'm sure that there are. I think there is definitely ambition, but I think there is the acknowledgement of things like family and children in school, and you can push sacrifice to the point of the detriment. So it's always understanding that, you know, children, they need you, and there's a lot of emotion that children are going through, you know, through their teen year. They never stop needing you, but you know, when they're young, they need you through those years where they're developing. Then they need you when all the hormones are going all over the place and they've got exams. So it's getting that balance right. And I think,
but there is a price to pay, because I mean, even in the world, you're seeing issues with Britney Spears, for example, you know, and all the talk of, so the pushiness, yes, there's a goal.
There is a goal, but I think that I think you have to select your management on the basis of, and you have to select your labels, and you have to, a lot of people are grateful if they have a label, and so they will just sign on the dotted line, as we saw with Twinkie in the film. She, you know, she just thought, oh, I'm going to get a check here, I can get a car, and she signed away her catalogue, not really thinking about the consequences. And I've seen some of the artists particularly in America, I'm talking about gospel artists, I'm not talking about where they do have some, you know, they're signed to really big labels. And the problem is that they can't get off the gravy train. When you speak to them, they have to end up in this town, in this state, in this city, regardless of whether they want to be there or not. And so again, it depends. It depends who you sign with and what the expectations are. And sometimes in order to be where you are, you don't exactly know what you've signed and the impact that would have on your life.
Okay, so Marcia, this film, The Clark Sisters, has its beginnings, its roots in the sort of late 60s, 70s, and that was the United States. I kind of wonder what was happening in the UK at the time, in UK gospel.
From my understanding, the early 70s, I think Jim Reeves was still very popular. And I think later on, by the 80s, my generation, second generation Christians, the Walter Hawkins and Andre Crouch and Jesse Dixon started to come to the fore. So there was a move away from that kind of old Caribbean style gospel, because we are Brits, we are Caribbean heritage. So that was what was popular.
Audrey, what is gospel and what is it for?
Gospel in terms of an artist, them understanding their Great Commission. That's how I see it. That is their Great Commission. That's their going into all the world, preaching the gospel. You're doing it in song. So your message, the way you present yourself, all those are aspects of how you deliver your gospel message.
So essentially, gospel artists are evangelists. So they're using the music as a form of evangelism. Is that right?
Yes, definitely.
Do you agree with that, Marcia?
Not at all. I see there's two different things. There's a genre of Black gospel, and then there's music that has a gospel message. So for me, when people say gospel music, most of the time they are referring to a particular type of music, the music that was birthed in America called gospel music. What's happened with us over here is that our artists are influenced by all kinds of music. So it might be rock, it might be R&B, might be soul. They write songs with a gospel content and marry it with whatever type of music style they're in. But for most musicologists would say that there is a certain type of music called gospel music, which is identified by the vocal style, the chords, the music sound, the way that a song is written and stuff. I think that us here in Britain, for a whole variety of reasons, have extended the meaning of what gospel music is. But when I think about gospel music, I think about the Clark Sisters, Kirk Franklin, Lurine Cato for Brits, people who sing Black gospel music and stuff like that. That's not to put down anyone who sings a gospel lyric with a different style of music, but I think there's a specific music that is gospel music.
So what does everybody else think to that? That sounds like quite a controversial thing.
That's quite hard to divide when you look at the UK, because as Marcia says, we're influenced by many things. So you then get gospel mixed with Afro praise, gospel mixed with R&B, gospel mixed with these different elements. And that's to be embraced as well, because it is bringing diversity to the music style. Yeah, and I would totally agree in the sense of gospel is a sound, and to me, it's an art form. Yeah, when you look at American gospel, they're delivering an art form. That includes performance, again, dare I say it. That includes entertainment, dare I say it. But that's all part of the delivery of that gospel vibe, that gospel movement, if you like. It can sound complex, but we know it when we hear it.
So as an art form, do you have to be a Christian to sing gospel?
Right. Clearly, we've seen a lot of people who are not Christians and sing gospel. It happens all the time. Nowadays, especially over here and in the United States, gospel as a sound is actually a mainstream sound now. So you have a lot of people who are totally non-Christian, but when you listen to the sound, when you listen to some of the words, they're very inspirational. You think, hold on, is that gospel? And you'd almost think you're listening to a gospel track, and it isn't gospel. And they use the chords and they use all the kind of the familiar sounds that you would, and it isn't, but it is actually being mainstreamed. the actual sound of gospel is being mainstreamed.
You're saying, Marlene, that a lot of non-Christian artists that are producing Christian, gospel sounding things, they're working with gospel songwriters, Christian songwriters, and they're working with gospel musicians. So they're deriving those tones and those styles and stuff. And maybe they don't even know they're gleaning it, but it's happening. It is happening.
And it's very interesting how gospel went from the church into the world or into the mainstream. So you had Aretha Franklin's, you had Elvis Presley, you know, these people coming. Even the Rolling Stones would go and listen to Sister Rosetta Tharpe, right?
Yep.
And they would glean and they would take bits, and that's still happening. You know, in the film, we saw some controversy. Could you talk a little bit about that, just how important that was and why there was so much controversy with the churches when artists were trying to emerge?
Well, they masked it as pride, didn't they? They said it was pride. She is getting too big. And so there was a part of it could be recognized as concern. We're concerned that you're becoming prideful, and pride comes before a fall. We're concerned, and then part of it could be related or considered jealousy. You're becoming too big.
Right.
But remember, with any large-scale organization, the organization should and always comes first, and everyone is a participant, as contributor to that organization, and in excelling and achieving its goals. No one is bigger than the organization. So if someone is deemed or looked at to be bigger than the organization, or bringing them into disrepute in their eyes, then that's a threat. And that's a perceived threat, because you notice they gave her a compromise on how to stop that. They didn't say, don't manage your daughters. They didn't say, don't let your daughters do the Grammys. They said, you can't take part in it.
So Marcia, gospel in the UK had a moment, a kind of renaissance in the 1980s when you had artists like Lurine Hudson and others. It was a John Francis and a number of other names. It was quite big. What happened then? Could you describe that period and then talk about what may have happened for it to have fizzled out?
What I remember of that time was that there was just a lot. It was just exciting. We were, second generation young people gravitated to gospel music, and we were just I'm saying we, but it wasn't me, but other big artists were just kind of forging ahead. So you had LCGC forming the choir, you had Inspirational Choir singing with Madness, getting into the charts, then getting a record deal, eventually with CBS Records. Then you had Lurine Hudson winning, being signed by a major, getting the best ever, at the time, the best record deal any female Black artist had been given, secular or otherwise. At that time, there was that kind of tussle between the church. Church leaders didn't really dig the music, so we kind of were rebelling against them. But what also was happening, like with what happened with Inspirational Choir, the record companies started getting interested in gospel music. So they signed LCGC, they signed, John was already signed. I remember a guy called Brian Powell got signed. The Trumpets of Zion almost got signed. But what was also happening was that a lot of us, the artists, really pushed to try and get record deals because they weren't getting the support of the church. Why did it tail down? Why did it tail down? I think that what happened, the artists hit a cul-de-sac in the sense they were pushing and pushing, the deals weren't coming, they weren't really getting a lot of gigs from the church. And I think there was a kind of general kind of discouragement. We had a lot of hope for our music because it's gospel music and it's God's music and it's great music. But in terms of the...
Well, it's very hard, isn't it, when you get the idea of the church as an opponent? Because in the film, you've got that, you've got that pushback.
What happens in the States is very different from what happens over here. So no matter what kickback the Clark sisters get, if you have a convention, you're going to invite them. You don't care because they're going to bring the house down. They're great singers.
We started off saying that gospel is a means of evangelizing the world. So go into all the world and preach the gospel. And there's a price tag on this. So just explain that, because that could sound like a dichotomy.
Yeah, but your gift makes room for you, doesn't it? And very often that's how it's being utilized. You want to be paid from what you do well.
And so when we see, for example, just extending a bit, where you see the prosperity pastors, the ones who have the aeroplanes and the ones who have the mansions, they might well be saying the same thing. My gift makes a way for me and I'm entitled to this opulent lifestyle, because whereas other people will probably see that they're using the gospel or Christ as a stalking horse for their own self-aggrandizement.
Yeah. You can never identify that as the heart of the man, really. You can't really identify it one way or another. They have their reasons and they will always make up their reasons. Some of those are valid to us on this side of the water. Some of them aren't valid to us on the other side of the water, or vice versa. I personally feel that American gospel and an American church environment has a different level of holiness than we have here in the UK. There's things that we would never do that they're doing out there. Do you see what I'm saying? But we still embrace them. We still glee from them. We still develop our crafts after them. So they're always going to have somebody that's going to take liberties, always.
Yeah. What's your take? And then I'll come to Tracey. So you have a very your sister's extremely successful. She's one of the leading gospel artists in this country. What have some of her, and you manage her, what have some of the challenges been for yourself and Lurine?
Again, it goes back to the business. I mean, if you saw the film, the one thing that Mattie Moss Clark had was that business nous that a lot of people, even in the secular world, do not have. And I come across artists in both camps, whether they're in the gospel world, who just haven't got the business acumen. And simple things like, is the song registered?
The back to basics.
The basics. Is the song registered? So that if it's played on the radio, if you do a live performance, are you getting royalties? Because it's not just about getting the fees from when you're performing. And it's about having that, understanding that. And I went away from, after leaving the choir, and I was involved in lots of different ministries for years. And then it was Lurine that said that she wanted me to manage her because she just wanted someone that she could trust. And I said, I'll give it 6 weeks and help you find somebody.
And here we are. So I think we're going to pretty much wrap up now. I just wonder what you think the future holds for the gospel industry in this country, and whether it's always going to be a case of looking over the fence at what's happening in America. Is it possible for this country to be leading the charge?
Personally, I think that they do look at us anyway, and get a lot of ministers that always like the authenticity from our music format and how we approach things over here. There's a genuineness in all aspects of Christendom, really. That's appreciated. But in terms of how we move forward, I think it's going to be more of the same, in as much that the educational process needs to carry on, and we have to deepen our understanding in what we're about, and then learn to be happy in our own sound, happy in what we develop, and happy in how we spread it in the various platforms and mediums. As I say, it's very easy to break music now, but let's do it with an understanding that, you know what, we're not emulating and copying, we're stretching, we're developing, and we're growing.
Thank you. Just quickly, final words. And if you want to say something about any message or suggestion you have for anybody wanting to enter the industry now. Tracey.
First of all, I would say if you thinking of entering the industry, then get your work done. I mean, get on Google, find out what's going on, find out what you need to do. You know, we have PRS, we have musician unions. Find yourself people who knows about these things and educate yourself.
And join Audrey's organization, the GMIA, of course.
Why not? Of course, indeed.
Okay, Marcia, just from you, what's gospel's future?
I'm going to quote from the film, which said, I think it was Mattie Moss. She said to her girls when she got them up early to sing, "We don't do easy in this house, we do excellent." And I think that, you know, gospel music is a message, but it's also an art form. And I think that any artist needs to focus on honing their art. People appreciate excellent art. So whoever you are, whether you do rap, reggae, whatever, aim to be the best. People appreciate great art.
The one thing I really want to kind of take away to the new artists that I'm really concerned about is safeguarding their safety in different spaces where behind the scenes, the sexual exploitation, other kind of exploitation that goes on, the exploitation with some people where the person who brings them on is taking all the money and leaves them with a bus fare and all those kinds of things. And I think that it's important for them to connect with GMIA. It's important for them to connect with established artists who can help to mentor them and give them some tips and things like about how do you keep yourself safe.
Marlene, Audrey, Tracey, Pastor Lloyd, Marcia, thank you so much for coming to watch the film, review the film, and to talk gospel, the real gospel.